what I think people would find more interesting is why we've called it the shaft.
I know you have a lot. I don't care. Just
Yeah, there's a lot, but like for me, like it's cliche. It sounds cliche.
awesome. Why is that the laugh like?
Nah, be like I think we've spoken about this moment for a very long time. So just it feels I'm like, what would I remember this thing for? Like what was the first thing I said or
Yeah,
did on the past? Like when you look back at this from like 10 years from now or something like that.
I mean that's true. And how this will go would also be very, very important. So sort of more intentional about the words and what you want to remember the moments for, actually. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but like I feel the tension already. Like even though it's our own podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because I've
like
been thinking about this the entire day, trying to look at, okay, how will this go? What should the discussions be about? What really do we want to talk about? What do we want people to hear? Right. I think now's the
yeah,
time. So very, very good that we are starting on this note.
cool.
Great.
Don't be shy.
For lots of people who are watching this, hopefully for the first time, my name is Andrews, and this is my debate partner, Erasmus. We've been debating for quite a while. If you've heard Andy and Erasmus before, these are the two musketeers behind the name. Essentially, we've evolved into Andy the Black Panther and Erasmus the
Oh, I
Big
love
Andy.
that.
I mean, those are some very memorable names because I think those names came with some very important turning points and tournament performances, and we'll talk about them in a bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
first, I think we need to talk about why this podcast. Why are we here? Because we could be, I could be in the gym, you could be sleeping or doing something else or learning something you want to focus on. But so why are we here this evening? Why are we talking about a podcast series and what do we want to achieve with it? I think for this, I would like you to maybe start on it because I think credit to you, a lot of this came from a dream, a vision, an idea that you've been for a while. And even though we are both working on it, I think you probably would represent a lot more the origins of this than we would. So
No, I mean, like, we've always spoken about like trying to leave a legacy within debates, and not only that, just try and transform the culture because,
yeah,
like, it's about the evolution of debating from where it's like a hobby or a passion to where like we try to do it very, very competitively, like win honor, glory for ourselves, to where we transition it into it impacting our whole lives and career to a point at which like we create a huge culture around it where we are driving deep conversations. So it needs to start from a point. So we just wanted to be a part of this, like because like there are many people who started from the foundations, did their parts, and now debating is a big thing. And when something
yeah,
becomes big, things need to shoot of it. So part of it is shaped by the conversations and the discussions that we have around it, archiving the history of it, and just letting it influence other things. So that's what that's really the goal, to be honest.
yeah. I think we've had this conversation for a very long time, usually in different forms, in different versions. And funny thing is, a lot of the time, it either starts or comes up after a very, very painful experience or a very, very happy experience. So it's
Yeah.
we've lost an out round, which we are very, very pained about, and we start thinking about how did we get here? How come we lost? How come this simple thing escaped us? And I
Yeah.
remember specifically after Belgrade WDC, where we started talking about some of the basic things that we were now trying to have a grasp of, and it started bringing back what are the origins of our training in African debate, what have been the foundations we were given. And we started discussing really whether these foundations have been strong enough, have they been reflective of global standards. And then I also remember after Duxbridge World's Open final, we started having this conversation again. And that was a very, very happy moment about how we need to do something for the African community, how we need to shape a conversation, shape a narrative, and create at least a trend or a material representation of what African debating has become in the modern day and what people within the modern day should be looking to achieve. So, yeah, mainly I see this really not just as a means to create content, but also a means to chart a path towards a legacy that we owe to the African community, because we've come a long way. Way back 2018 for you, way back. I can't even remember the year. We've come a very, very long way in debating, and today to say we can even think of competing on the global level is a very, very big thing, right?
To be honest, the one thing I also find, especially like moving forward, like when this podcast is being discussed, where we get the opportunity to talk to people who like have achieved a lot, it's also like a form of honor, because like I feel bad when people think, oh, maybe like it's Andy and Erasmus. Like before Andy and Erasmus, there were lots of people. There were people who did wonderful things at different stages, and we're losing the stories. We're losing the connection. So we need a platform to also honor some of these people who have done like immense things in the circuit. And I think this will be a good opportunity to do so too.
That's true. And I think a lot of the time these stories drowning out have way more impact than we think of. It's not just like people forgetting about certain individuals. It's equally people not believing that these things are possible in the first place. So there are lots of people from Africa. They do not hear the stories of people who have made it from Africa within the debates. And so for a lot of them, the mentality is that it is impossible to achieve these things. And so creating this and making this exposure happen is going to go a long way to generate belief. The kind of efforts we put in, the fact that it is possible to make it work really, really changes a lot. Right?
Yeah. I mean, the mentality is crucial. But what I think people will find more interesting is why we've called it the shaft. I mean, you're on there, so that's half of the answer. But
whoa. I mean, I thought this stereotype I knew the stereotype would come. I just didn't know you'd be a partaker in it, because I know people would definitely say the shaft is my idea, which backstage we can talk about whose idea really was. But for now, you go on.
No, I mean, like we really also wanted like a name that encompasses like what we do, like in terms of the sports. And shafting, like I mean, in the true sense of the word, anyone else who hears the word shaft will think, yeah, that's a negative thing, that's a bad thing. But like we are talking about positive shafting, where it became like a crucial strategy in closing, where we just don't agree with our opening. We just like bend everything they say. We still do forms of it where we just try and change the context of debates. We've just found a way to make it very, very good, adaptable, especially on a global stage. But I remember back home when we were in Africa, it was really brutal because like
I remember a period where Tintin, I think in nationals train, in nationals camp, banned myself and Bannerman from ever shafting in around. He banned us from shafting. We shouldn't dare do it. And he made us do OG for 10 consecutive rounds, so we'll never be close.
No, I love it. Like we did, I wouldn't call it shafting because but like we did a version of that in 2018, Boache and myself, 2018, where like in closing we were on the people when people saw us, because like these guys will always change the debates. Because everyone has always missed something. And I think the idea behind it was that debate is too broad to have talked about everything. Like, I don't believe that someone has talked about everything. So it was just a strategy of leaving out the crucial things which people have not spoken about, and then making it look like they've missed something big within the debate. But I think it makes a cool name for the podcast, and also like debates lovers, something that they're going to relate to and all, but we will not shaft ourselves on this podcast.
Well, we will not shaft ourselves, but I know we'll shaft someone. Definitely shaft some people. And the thing is that I think it's more of also a representation of the kind of conversations we are going to be having here.
Yeah.
These conversations are ones that may undercut certain narratives out there, may undercut certain notions, may change people's perceptions about a lot of things, specifically with debating in Africa. And we are going to be having some very tough conversations about really being critical about the structures we have, and being very objective about how effective they are, how progressive they've been, and how much they've caught up with the pace at which the sport is developing. And so these may, in some sense, be shafting the system. But I mean, like you are saying,
if you think of it,
shaft.
if you think of it, we are all on Gav, right? We are all Africa, so we are all on. But then
some people would knife some people for some reason. So but I think also eventually, if it evolves, it has a significance beyond just debate relations, right? It has a significance to more of what we want to do, which is to do something that unearths both the goods, the qualities, and also the challenges within the status quo, and try to fix them as we go along. So yeah, good name there. I know that definitely people would hear this, rush to it with the hope that we are coming to discuss how much you shaft, but because I don't shaft, I don't know how to shaft. You just said it. You and Boachi were shafting way back. I was a kid by then, and I was a victim of one of those shafts in one of the top rooms where my humble self went to a room, presented a very beautiful case, only for me to hear, well, they forgot one thing. And that one dating around. So I mean, it's a practice that people can see me in chambers to learn, because I became a victim of it a lot of times. So I had to learn to adapt. But it's also that I still struggle against you with it in closing, and I hate it. I really hate it. Like, I'm so comfortable in opening with everybody in closing except one person.
Anyway, I mean, one of the things we also wanted to talk about, especially today, was like how the debate journey has been for both of us. Like, I think, maybe people don't know, but like we've been at different points before, like there was a confluence where we came together. So I don't know if you remember that moment, the exact moment.
Not the exact moment, but I remember the conversation that led to that. And I think that conversation for me was during PAUDC 2021, right? It was during PAUDC 2021. I didn't speak in that PAUDC. I went to Abuja Debate Open. And then when I came back, we were on a call having a conversation about debating the sport. And I think we're having a conversation also about a few tournaments that were upcoming, right? That was the point at which we decided to even do Dogsbridge Worlds 2022, because it was one of the closed tournaments at the time. And at that point, it was more like, I'm not sure we knew how far it would go, but I think we just had an initial commitment that we're going to put in some amount of effort. We're going to be dedicated. We're going to train. We're going to learn the new strategies that are coming up, be abreast with global debate tournaments, and participate in as many as we can, and push ourselves out there, because we felt it was like Africa had risen, and there's always this trend where we rise to the ceiling where we can't break it, and then instead of going on to break it, we just come back down. So this time we're like, okay, no, that's not happening. We need to take a decision and move on. But I think perhaps that we've had very, very good sparks. We've had a couple of tournaments together.
That was what I was about to even say. That's like, I think before that, like I was one of the very few people who like how do I say, transitioned from the physical tournaments. And I think when the physical tournaments came in, there was like a mass exodus, especially of the people who were very good. So I had most of my mates who, like, not my mates, like some of them were my seniors, but they were the guys I was now competing with, who I thought gave me, and now it was just like kids. So but then also I'd always just thought of myself that, like, look, I feel like I'm very good even on an international level. So this is the opportunity to do it. We are at home, we are not doing anything. Let me just like put myself into this. And I think we were doing quite well. Like, people instantly saw us and were like, okay, who are these guys? Where do they come from? I think myself and Abner made the
Yeah.
first dog bridge ESL finals, and we lost. And that was the first time we were just like competing. I think MIDP round robin. We were in that too. We did very well. I think we did HWS, where we that legendary, what's the name of that app we used to debate?
I forgot it.
So yeah, so like at that point we were debating against some of the best people in the world, like Sajid, the winner of WDC in 2022, we debated against him in a tournament. So if you're debating against those kind of people, it just tells you where you are. But like we needed to do better. We just didn't need people to say, "Oh, you guys sound smart." And I think that's where like we began to feel like we need to work hard.
For me, what I can pick here is that at the point we had our strengths. We genuinely had our strengths, but our weaknesses really were not as huge, but they were a lot of small things that we needed to work on. And the difficulty was we needed to recognize them in the first place to even work on them.
Yeah.
Right. And coming from a place where you are the one who is deciding to spearhead a revolution at a particular time, where, like saying, those who had done it in the past were not around for you to interact with. Those who had done it in the past to some extent were not within the space to go with you. And so it's like you had to start this discovery all on your own, retake those steps and try evolve from there. And so a lot of the challenges we were having really were not inability to adapt or inability to learn. It was mostly the recognition. At what point do we get to realize that this thing that we've been doing was not the right way or was not really up to the standard that we had to do, right? And I think we can share a little bit of those aha moments here and there.
No, I think for me, like it was, what competition was it? Like, I think before we even, I think I was it. When was this LAC competition where we didn't even break or so? I think was it before or after?
It was Yale. It was Yale Ivy before Duxbridge.
Yeah,
In Kumasi.
Yeah,
we didn't break.
We didn't break. Like, and I was like,
that was the first tournament actually we had come after we had had that conversation that we would forge forward together. Our first tournament, we didn't break.
We didn't break. So like, and before that, like, I mean, we had the whole conversation where we thought like we are better than some of these people. Like, no disrespect, but like we heard some of them were like, I'm way smarter. And for me, I'd been debating for a while. So like, I'm like, I know what's going on here. And we're supposed to be doing way more. And then we went in there and we didn't break. So that was when we knew that, okay, you can't just go in there on your confidence and on them knowing you need to work very, very hard. So we decided that we're going to start. So I think for me, I felt it was a challenge now, like, no. So what are they saying? What was the feedback they were giving us? Let's continue to work on it. Let's talk to people. Let's just like learn from people. Let's take the feedback. Let's put all the negativity, bias, everything aside. Let's pretend we are starting debates today. We are starting our careers today. What was the attitude that we're going to have towards this?
Yeah. And I think there are two things I want to point out here. The first one is, you remember this when we started the spars with the big boy group, where we started the spars, and then Pranav would always give us feedback and say, guys, you didn't weigh. And I think, this guy, I weighed. So how can you tell me I didn't weigh? The next day, we come back with feedback, guys, you didn't weigh, and so you lost. I said, but we mentioned weighing, and we said we were weighing. What is this guy talking about? Until one day, I think you asked the question to Pranav about what does he mean by weighing? What is expectation when you talk about weighing? And that explanation changed a whole lot, where it sparked the journey where we went on asking very, very good debaters around how they weigh, what are the best things to learn about weighing, and to see us in future competitions where weighing became one of the most effective things we used to strategies, was just absolutely outstanding. And the difficulty there was, it wasn't that we weren't ready, it was that one of the things is, which highlights a much more bigger problem within the space, is the understanding of what we mean. What are the the details of what we mean. When we say weighing, in the African debate context, to be very fair, weighing probably means something slightly more different than when you go to the international stage and they're asking
I
you.
don't even remember what it is again.
See, so I think that's, for me, that was one of the most defining moments, and it really changed not just our view on weighing, but also how we asked for feedback moving forward. Because moving forward, we were not just asking for, okay, what did we do wrong, or how did you view the debate? I remember where we had extensive calls with judges, and then we asked, this is what we've been facing. How do you think we interact with this? How do you think we can improve on this? And that's when we started getting a lot of clarity about what is really expected. What should we be doing?
I mean, it's a lot of hard work. I don't think people like, to be honest, the reason we probably don't have, and we'll be talking about the debating culture soon.
Yeah.
Like the reason we probably don't have a lot of international breakers is because it's dirty work. Like that's how I see it.
Yeah.
It's doing like the nitty-gritty, like, and you get to a level where you just don't want to start again, right? And that's what I felt. I kept on asking myself, like, I've got to a point where like I've broken up my first worlds, made like quarterfinals. Like, do I really want to start again? So it was, if you remember, it was the humility. It was going to this judge and knowing that this judge was very, very biased towards us and still smiling and saying, do you have anything? Like, I want to hear your, and it's some simple things as don't send it the feedback by text, put us in a call, talk to us, open your mouth and talk to us, have a conversation. And that's when they begin to talk freely. Like they just also create, speaking to them and letting them know we are not angry, we just really, really want to learn. And then them letting their guard down, them letting us really know their thoughts, their intents, because most of the time, sometimes because of the barriers in identity, they can sound very polished, and you will not get the feedback from them. It's making them feel very, very comfortable with us to the point where they were freely expressing their thoughts and their opinions, and we could pick on them, learn from them. And even if not by sheer learning from it, it's by hearing the same things over and over again and hearing which ones are consistent. That's when you know what's wrong with you. And it's also now known for each specific judge what you need to do in order to win their votes in there. And them knowing you, just like because you spoke to them nicely and like you had the whole conversation with them, now they know you are putting in work. And I think it began to pay off for us little bit by bit.
Sitting here listening to you right now, I'm really having a lot of flashes of the amount of work that had to go in there. And today, like, practicing it seems a little bit easier than the process of trying to learn, because learning was very, very bumpy. I remember we'd be speaking at competitions. We are so tensed. We are so drained, not even from the speaking itself, but the amount of effort, the amount of work you have to be doing to get everything up there, because you wanted to maintain things. And you know, for Belgrade Worlds, we're doing 2 rounds a day. And remember, after the second round, I'll literally fall asleep.
So tired.
We have to wait for like 2 hours later. We'd wake up and then we'd now come and catch up about the day. And those were just 2 rounds, and the exhaustion was just crazy.
I mean, it was crazy. You had all these like template sheets, PM speech where you should write. So before you go and speak, before the motion, you have like
the
about
rubrics at the back,
like at the back, telling us how we should weigh, how we should, and it's all like lined over there before like your speech or your matter, your case itself comes. And imagine doing all of these things and like it's not paying off you, because we didn't instantly break and start. Like after Dogs Ridge was good in terms of giving us the confidence, but then people were no longer surprised by us. People like, because I remember the highlights of Dogs Ridge was hitting Mark Cato and
the
semi-final. And since then, like we saw Cato rise up this one, we're like, okay, wait, what happened?
Left, right, center.
I remember we knocked out Dylan in that quarter. So the good thing was some of these people were very nice people who now kept on giving us feedback. But like, they went on to improve exponentially. It also became like, we're like, okay, if we could beat these guys once and they are at this point, we should also be at that point. But then we were not. People
Well,
just,
yeah.
you are the nice team that will give a second, but will not let you win in top room.
I think
Will
that
not
also
let
created a huge amount of pressure. And looking back, it was like, because at some point we were not judging our individual journeys to some extent, but equally judging against, hey, these are people we beat in January. Why should March they be beating us 3 rounds
yeah,
straight? We never even competing against them on any reasonable level. It was like we also fell into the trap. And I'm saying this because I know some people would fall into this trap eventually.
yeah,
Fell into the trap of not waiting out for a strategy to develop and grow,
yeah,
but always just quickly jumping off to the next thing and trying to experiment the next thing also. And
yeah,
I think it's one of the reasons why maybe now would feel much more comfortable, because there is a strategy we picked up way back,
yeah,
allowed it to grow, even if we didn't intend to, because we weren't very, very competitive and trying to measure the outcomes quickly. And we've allowed it to grow, and now we feel much more comfortable working on that strategy moving on.
I mean, if we'll talk about like turning points debate culture, and this sort of like goes into the whole turning point discussion. It was the one another aha moment for me was like when we spoke to people and they were like, "Oh, so this is your strategy," and I was like, "Huh?
Like, how do you
I have
know?
a strategy." I don't. We just debate. Like, what
Okay.
strategy? We just debate. People were like, "No, no, no, no. You are the
Keep
guys
going
who
like
like to do
this.
so."
Yeah.
I'm not going to reveal our strategy over here. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We still have to do so and so. And I was like, "Really? We do?" so since I was like, nah, we don't want to box ourselves. We want to do everything. And we do everything. And then like the results were not coming, they were not coming. But like I said, like sometimes I feel like most of the hard work we put in the beginning, they paid for us way later.
Way later.
If I remember, like now we don't go to tournaments and expect not to like break open. Like we are not at first, like when they are mentioning open,
There
we
was
don't we listen for yes.
just
So
you are waiting to see, okay, from 4th to like 8th years, or which part are you?
yeah, but now like we enter in with the expectation, which I feel like we've earned by the privilege of the amount of work that we put in. And I think that ties nicely into discussing about developing a debate culture, right? Because
Yeah.
like we saw these people and like the kind of hard we're just entering into their spaces, the kind of work that they put in, the kind of efforts that they put in, like talking about nitty gritties, like uh, I don't want to give up names, but I think each of us put it out, like where they have each other's names and they were talking about us. And I was like, we don't even think, and we are the underdogs, and we don't even
We go to
strategize.
tournaments. Back then, we go to tournaments just to debate. We are just
Yeah,
expecting round one and we move on from there. But
yeah,
people have sat and have simulated rooms, and
yeah.
I meet these guys. This is
This
what I
is what
think
we
about
do.
them. This is what I want to do with them. And it's like they
Yeah.
were 2, 3 steps, 4 steps ahead of you.
Ahead, yeah. I mean, not to like take a because I think when I joined debating at first, this was there. I just think over the period it was lost.
Yeah, it
Like
was
those
lost.
faithfulness and aging would be having banter on the page, telling each other how they were going to beat each other. Like people were just like talking
I
about
think
debates.
we do this, to be fair, we do this on the local level, on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
level. I just don't, I think it's a practice that we didn't think was relevant internationally. We didn't
Yeah.
feel confident enough to
Plus, I think it was lost in the circuits, to be honest. I think like these days, people go to tournaments with the expectation that they'll win. Like they are not thinking Erasmus, when they think Erasmus is coming to the tournament, is, oh, he'll probably beat me.
Yeah,
Like,
but how do I beat Erasmus?
yeah,
Nobody's thinking about how.
nobody's thinking about that. Like planning. And I mean, like lots, not just this, like lots of different things, like some mentoring, like people
Yeah,
have like personal coaches,
yeah.
like paying them to like coach them and like
Like,
mentors.
I think the revelation we had at the moment was that um, even though we're working hard, we were either channeling our energies into the slightly wrong and unproductive areas, rather than channeling the energy into the areas that we really need to be focusing on. Because what we kept doing was going back to the things that we were good at and
Yeah.
questioning them whether we were even good at them in the first place. because people were doing other things that I would say gave them an edge, and we didn't know what those things were. And so all we kept on doing was just going back to, okay, our analysis structure, okay, our impacting structure, all those things over and over again. And that revelation or that experience where we got to know, okay, there are different levels to this. There are other things that people were doing that were much, much advanced or adding much more ease to the intensity of the work that they had to be doing behind for every single round. Really, really helped us, because then it changed a lot in terms of the kind of things that we had to do, right? And the results that we were expecting from there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I just want to say this again, like, not to say that like we also don't. I think we also have some advantages, some things which we do like within our debating culture over here. One thing is like a peer-to-peer mentoring is massive. Like, when you come out of KNSU, you are training KNSU students, like other people can approach you, talk to you. Like when you come to a crowd thing, like
always sharing knowledge for free here.
Yes, at socials, like you gather around and they are telling stories, they are telling Toli, and you're hanging around with some of these guys, and you can ask them about arguments and they give it to you, because that's how I learned. I learned like at the hands of the big boys, just like following them, and just so we had certain things like which was really, really crucial to us doing what we do. There was like the support structure, the network. There were people who were like filling us in, like you go to Nigeria and like faithfulness gave me his whole house to sleep in, like things like that, which was there, the camaraderie. And I feel like all of these things are part of like the debating culture and the evolution of it. So I mean, the point I'll just try and make that, like, if you don't establish the culture and if you're not intentional about creating it, you begin to lose certain things, because over time, like, things creep into the culture where, like, it's just not done anymore, or it's just not done right, and no one really questions it. Like, when we talk about debate is dying, the quality is going down, people don't know what exactly it is. They just think it is because we have bad debaters. No, I don't think so, because we were not good debaters when we stepped into the scene. Certain things which made us good. It was, for example, the KNUST win at all cost culture, where it was like, we are just about winning. And this is KDS, we win. And people come in and
that came with.
Yes, and hungry about debates, hungry about trophies. Because there was a culture of winning, for example. So you it's not something that you immediately realize, but it's something that like you need to be intentional about in sort of like elevating it and making sure that like everyone understands.
I think for the debate culture aspect of this whole discussion, what I tend to see is expectations, because I don't know how it happened, but especially for the young ones coming up, for some reason, and this is a double-edged sword, for some reason, very, very good performances of some speakers tend to give them very, very low expectations of themselves. And that's really not the impact you would want that kind of outstanding performance to have. You would want somebody who is performing very, very well to be a motivation that it can be done. But one thing that was happening was, like you'd say, even though there was very, very good performance, there was also some form of concentration of where these good performances were coming from. And so people outside of that space constantly felt they were not there, or they didn't have that expectation. They didn't have that.
Say the names. You said this is the Shout podcast.
Yeah, this is a Shout podcast. So for instance, in Ghana, you had KNUST being very, very dominant. In Africa, 3 times in a row. You had University of Ghana following with very, very good performances. And the battle was always between these two schools. But then you look at very, very good schools like UCC, you look at UNE, you look at UDS, you look at UHAS, and you realize that they had very, very bright sparks at various points in time, right? But that culture never continued, because eventually either those people met a very, very superb generation of KDS, UGDS debaters that blocked their shine, or you had them eventually struggling to move on and win, like UCC did, but eventually that belief drains away. That it took these guys. Look at the number of years it took these guys to win, and so how are we going to get there? And it's one thing I've been trying to do. So I'm in this rebuilding project with the UCC debates, and the first thing, which was the most basic thing, if you ask anybody, is about the expectations of themselves and the kind of belief they have. And it doesn't just come with just expecting without working. So they themselves understand that it comes with very, very demanding commitment. And I'm very blunt with a lot of people that see debating, we can all be in it for the basic skills that it gives us. And that's fine. And that's okay. But if you are in it for the joy of it, the quality of it, the growth, the wins, the lows, the team bonding aspect, and the development of it, that culture is more attitude now than any other thing you can think of. Because it's that attitude of you getting up, wanting to learn, wanting to study, wanting to win, that changes a lot of things. And trust me, they are coming. They will be very, very competitive very, very soon.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, very, very competitive very, very soon. But not to focus on them. I think that the thing is that people all over need to start having that mentality that it is not far away from them. It is not by some magic design or anything. You just have a set of people who believe strongly that they can and put in the work. And that's what we need.
I have my own fair share of personal stories and like people who said things in corners about me and I heard them, and like people who like all these things. But like, yeah, obviously this is the first edition, so probably people should tune in if I get to ever tell my story. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about some of these things. And people who know me in private, like I don't shy away from some of these things. I just refuse to give it like the recognition, and especially because I'm also still in the sport. I recognize my position within the sport, and I don't want to ruin my opportunity to impact or influence people in the way in which it should. So like, yeah, I'm happy that like now this is the shifting perspective, and we can definitely, because like, look, even if no matter how dominant we are as KNUST, there was a time ago we weren't known in Africa.
Yeah.
Today we are.
To be very, very honest, I think
shout outs to
even as at my first PADC in 2018, people really didn't know KNUST.
Didn't know KNUST. So like today we are the best. Like it's not even like shout outs to Uma. When he comes into the podcast, he can come and hype his school. For me, KNUST is like the best in Africa now. And now we are making strides on the world stage. Like, look at us, and nobody knew us, and we are making strides on the world stage. So I know it's easy to say that it's just mentality, but like people need to understand that it takes time. You need to build something, you need to be intentional. And with that same mentality, it means that it doesn't matter when you started debating in wherever you were, you can plot a chart to dominance, and you need to be able to put in the work. No one is going to give it to you on a silver platter.
No, one thing I've seen within recent this year, to be specific, like going to Ghanaian Opens, a lot of the time you walk into a room and people are like, how do you expect us to beat you? Like people are like, yeah, you are too good. I'm like, guys, see, you
trying to discourage me from beating you, because
exactly. But
it's not going to discourage me.
The thing is that people tend to view very, very good debaters as some sort of non-human characters who had these superhuman powers and abilities to be extremely smart, very, very intelligent. But to me, and you know this, like it's all down to hard work and just being deliberate about the growth process. Every single thing boils down to these two things: being determined, finding the right people, doing the steps, and making sure that you grow within the process. But a lot of them just see you and are like, yeah, you are too good. I'm like,
it's the easy thing to do. I came into a sport which had like woes. They had the likes of Boache, Karim, Prince, Telfa, like Ejim, Kumbi, like people who were very well established before me. Like I went through the roughs, like, but I came out at the other side with massive respect. Like achieving, picking. I think the one thing I'm always glad for is that I picked my trophies in that era, and those trophies mean a lot to me. So yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, like, and people would always think maybe you were smart, already smarter. Like I wasn't. Like if you saw me around the time I started debating, like I was engaged in banter with some, because it's just about, like you said, knowing the right thing. And I think these are the kind of things we'll be discussing on the podcast when
Yeah.
people speak about the story. Like you can just like learn from it, find motivation. So that's my hope for the podcast, to be able to like inspire like a whole new generation of debaters who have so much belief in themselves. And I think my personal vision, which everybody I've coached or experienced, had an experience with, knows, is that like for you to be able to visualize and see and like know that you can do it, just like I did it. Like I need people to be breaking my records or things that I did. I need people to be doing it and taking it a step further. My goal is to do it so that it makes you believe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's one of my hope for this podcast, that we bring up a new generation of debaters who have like stupid belief, like ridiculous amounts of belief in their abilities.
Yeah. And to be fair, for those who don't know this, Erasmus was there the first time I ever joined a debate training. It was at Queen Elizabeth's one here in UST. And I used to not like him for a particular reason. Not that I dislike your personality.
You know this.
Is that the only person who would finish training and from the top of his mind mention 35 topics for you to go and read was Erasmus. You finish training and JJ would be like, guys, you can go. What says, well, reading assignments. And he would sit and just look in the sky and start capitalism, socialism, this, that, right. And he would literally give you more than 25 topics to go and read. And the following day, he comes and he's asking, were you able to read? What did you read? What did you? And it's not like he's giving you 3 days. The following day, he's giving you a different set. And I didn't used to like you for that thing.
Yeah.
Every single day you are sitting in class and all you are thinking of is Erasmus's 25 list of things that you need to read, because that evening he's going to ask you whether you've read them or not.
But see the debaters who came out of it, like
Yeah.
Dela is doing very well for himself now. And I think that those are some of the things we'll also be discussing, right? Because like, it's not just about the debate, right? It's about people who went through those things, how it added up to their experience, what they're doing in the outside world. See Jennifer. Jennifer is a brilliant lawyer now. Like I remember, like a couple of people in there who did very, very well for themselves, even in life generally, and also in debate. And see you, watch.
That's the thing. I look at it and I'm like, a lot of people may see the two of us and think, well, maybe we are just two sort of co-equal debaters now, debating as a partnership and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, you still more speaker points than me, so no one is, they are not wrong, probably.
But I think for me, I look at the partnership, the quality of it, and it just concludes on one thing also of how good of a coach you've been, because you picked me right from that time. I think you've probably been the most consistent coach I've had. I've had like a couple of on and offs.
Yeah,
at the beginning, I've had BNI throughout the PADC era. I've had Tintin, I've had Banks, I've had Calvin coach me for some time. But you've always been at almost every single stage. And even when we became partners, a lot of the time we're still basically coaching each other, learning what we needed to improve, correcting things and suggesting. You go and see a video on how to be a great whip, and the next thing I see it's in my DM, you need to go and watch this, and it's good to improve you. So you see me and you call me world champion. You should know the person I'm speaking to right now, because really, really the kind of person you are. And it's very, very good. And for me, it also defines the kind of culture we should be having, right? Because it shouldn't always be, and like you were saying, it shouldn't always be an asymmetric relationship where some people always feel they should be at the top and others should constantly be at the bottom. Should have that elevation, that rise where you start speaking with people, and I think that thing really helped me a lot. Like my first ever external tournament was with you. And speaking with my coach gave me some extreme confidence just to be saying things even if I didn't believe in them. I remember that final for Easter's, you were like, you prepped me, you said all the things. I think, went to say a lot of the things. I said, see, this is what I need you to say. This is what we need to argue. And like, you don't need to believe it. You just need to say it. You know that?
I remember saying that.
Yeah, I just said it. I just debated it. And I remember that was the first time I ever took a POI from Karim. And
Yeah.
my answer to
You
him
killed
was,
him. You killed him, by the way.
yeah, I just told him I'd literally just analyzed this. I don't know if you were not listening. One of the speech, right? But those things were really, really good in defining some of the experiences we had and some of the learning curves that has brought some of us here. So
we'll talk about it. I mean, to be honest, like people, like I said, people did it for me. Like I also a benefit of like the coaching of these guys. Like also my interactions and friendships with like people like Charity, Lehakwe, like it's like just the sheer amount of people that you pick knowledge from is immense, and even on a global stage. So like we are really all here to pour ourselves out, and we're like hopefully it just gets better. Really, that's my hope for this podcast. Also that it also puts debate in a certain light, because like you now want people to switch on and like get key insights on global issues from debaters, like because we leave it to politicians, we leave it to people with degrees and certificates from YouTube, but like where are those the thoughts the thought centers, who are the thought pillars of our society? It needs to be us. So we need to bring all of that discussion here, talk about our amazing people over here, export debate in a very unique and wonderful way.
Yeah, and it is really the goal of the podcast and the hope as well, because for this it looks like unraveling. It's more like celebrity status, where when people get there, you view them as some superhuman until you get them unravel themselves, and you really start to see it's a lot of the time not so different from what you've experienced, what you are still experiencing, the things that you are attempting to do that you maybe doubt whether it will work or not. And so these stories are not just meant to just put people out there and showcase or archive some of these things, but also give us the kind of confidence we need in terms of identifying with different groups of people, different experiences, different stories, and then using that to develop the sport as a whole. So yeah, seems like pretty good test episode and a pretty good one, pretty good first episode for this podcast. For what's worth, I don't think today we shafted a lot though. So
no, today is the nice part. I think moving from here, like we should expect good, better discussions. So yeah, I was happy to have this conversation. This is a conversation we've had several times. So
several
stress talking about it. But I'm just glad this time everybody can get to hear it and from it.
Yeah.
All right.
I had one question to ask you though before we hop off. What would you say is your, I don't know, favorite moment? Yeah, let me put it that way. Like favorite moment, Andy and Erasmus partnership, favorite moment. You should pick one. I know you have a lot. I don't care.
There's a lot, but like for me, like it's cliche. It sounds cliche, but like the Dogs Ridge moment was immense for me. Like I've never felt happiness to that point before. But like I think moments that could rival it or be on the same level was that LSC semi-final, even though we lost.
Yeah.
Like the room in which we were in.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, my head was spinning, but I just couldn't show fear. But like, it wasn't even fear, it was excitement. I was too excited. Too excited. But yeah, I think we've really had some good moments, to be very honest.
Okay, don't ask me because I don't have a favorite moment.
No, you should definitely list yours. You can't go there.
Because for me, the best ones I really can't remember. It's usually when those moments when a judge tells you guys were brilliant, like those moments. So there's this particular round in my head which was like my best experience, and it was this round where I think Claudia was the judge, and we had this debate about a scientist who had created a pseudo world like humans, and the scientists should tell them whether they had created them and all. So the ones who created them. There was another round similar to that one, which was a finance motion about whether they should whether they should be mandated. I think big companies or
Yeah,
Fortune.
yes, they should have a salary cap.
Yeah, no salary. I think mandated to go public at a
Yeah.
those 2 rounds where we were closing up, and right from 2 minutes into the member speech, everybody was just taking their shots here and there, and everybody was just stuck. And in the judge feedback, you would hear them saying literally the way you use in this round, and they would say, "This is how I weighed the debate." And there was one round, especially the econs one, where Claudia said specifically that I agree with their weighing, and that's what I'm using to judge the debate. I was so excited at that moment because those were the most memorable moments. I mean, yeah, Dr. Switch World is up there. That semis is also up there. But to be very honest, the moment, because Dr. Switch and LSE were a little bit overwhelming. So I probably couldn't enjoy the wins, the win which I wanted to. But these 2 rounds, every single time, where I'm supposed to talk about how to develop a closing strategy, they are the 2 things that pop up in my head. And I'm really, really happy. Every single time I wish those performances would be there. Like,
I mean, I think it's also one of the things we talk about in terms of improving, right? That we want to maintain those performances we want to keep on giving those kind of. And I think people also maybe put an unfair burden on us to always be like that all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't debate at that level all the time. Then the debate needs to fall on your lap. Good topic, good position. And when it does, people see the kind of debaters that we are. And I think for me, it's compares to some of the best in the world, to be honest. So it's just about starting to show the way. And it's not just us. There are lots of teams from Africa who do that. So I think it's time to begin to showcase that. But this is a good segment. A good segment to get people to list their favorite moments, ask questions, maybe trivia to also know the history.
Definitely we would come back with more episodes, more discussions. You should be looking forward to some one-on-one interviews with some of Africa's greats, and also more of panel discussions to discuss a lot more of the issues we want to discuss in relation to the African continent, debate evolution, what are our next steps, what should our focuses be, and those discussions that lead to more of a systemic evolution of the African debate. So thanks for joining me on your podcast, Erasmus, and we'll see you some other time.